Hey, everybody. Welcome to the first in-season edition of the SNL Stats Roundtable. I am so happy to officially welcome you to our show. My name is John, the creator of SNL Stats. And if you haven't checked me out on Twitter yet, come follow the account because if you're interested in anything statistics and SNL, I'm your guy. And this season, for those who haven't seen the previous couple of podcasts and the roundtable I did last week, you should definitely check out last week's show. I'm putting together roundtables every single week where I have some very special guests with me, including superfans, other podcast hosts, journalists that love SNL and ones that cover the show. And we're here to talk about everything to do with SNL, not necessarily sketch by sketch, because there are a lot of wonderful other podcasts that do stuff just like that. But instead, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of SNL, how everybody did in the last episode compared to previous eras. And I think it's going to be a really fun time. So that's pretty much what SNL Stats is for those who don't know. If you want to check out last week's show, feel free to look us up on YouTube, SNL Stats, or check out on the podcast feed, search SNL Stats, subscribe. And we had an amazing show last week, so I encourage you to check it out. And now I'd like to welcome my panel for this evening. So first up, I'm going to introduce my man, Rich Tackenberg, who is a former SNL podcast host, who I'm welcoming back to the game. He used to work with Rob Has a Podcast and Post-Show Network, Post-Show Recaps on the Rob Has a Podcast network with the podfather himself, Rob Cesternino. So Rich Tackenberg, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah. And we also have with us Liz Shannon Miller. She is the senior TV editor from Collider, who knows a ton about SNL and movies. If you haven't checked out she does some amazing movie trivia on YouTube. So Liz, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. It's my pleasure. And this was something really cool. This is something I wanted to do because we have a lot of people in the community who I've connected with over the last couple of years when I posted some stats. And I said, there's so many super fans out there and people who want to talk about the show. And there's people who really, really love the show. So I did some interviews over the last few weeks with some people. And one of the guys that stood out to me was this guy, Bill, who has a 34-year streak of never missing an SNL episode. I think that's right. You'll correct me, Bill, if I'm wrong, but
that is correct.
Okay, that is correct. So Bill, I'd like to officially welcome you to the show. And why don't we start, Bill? Tell me a little bit about your history with SNL.
Well, my first episode was in 1986 with the best cast ever: Phil Hartman, Dana Carvey, Jan Hooks, and I was hooked immediately. My dad had gotten me into it that summer because at the time they were running the original 5 seasons on PBS. And I had to start watching it live after that and never stopped. So,
yeah. And you're right. That is an incredible cast and a cast that ultimately led to Chris Rock being on SNL. So we'll make that connection later on tonight. Liz, let me hear a little bit from you. So what's your history with the show? How many years have you been watching? And tell me about your love for the show.
I mean, Bill, when you were saying that, I just wanted to ask you, like, hey, what your questions, what your response inspired me was just like the idea of like, your favorite SNL cast is probably the first one you ever saw, and so my history goes back to like watching Comedy Central reruns in the middle of the day on cable, and I think I also was like a big Mike Myers, Dana Carvey era fan, which I think is pretty overlapping with what you just said. And yeah, it's I think it's a fascinating show, and it's one that even when I am frustrated with sketches, I feel like I can't stop looking away from it. Like it's just it's something that we're all talking about, ergo we talk about it. It's this Mobius strip of fascination.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's why we're here tonight, because we're going to talk about our love for SNL. Sometimes everybody has a different relationship with the show. They have good times and bad. And Rich, I'll give you a chance too. Tell me a little bit about your history with the show and your love for it.
Sure. I mean, I started watching, I think in the year before Eddie Murphy. So going way back when I was young enough that I didn't understand the jokes, but I knew that they were cooler than anyone else I knew. And I will say, as per Bill, that, it really kicked in for me, in the Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman years, Mike Myers, remember him as a featured player and just being like, what is going on here? This is so good. And like you guys, have not missed an episode since. They're my team. I mean, I have a lot of favorite shows, but this is my sports team. This is the team that I watch every week. Some weeks they win, some weeks they lose, some weeks there's more errors than there are home runs, and I don't care. I'm in it for the long run. I'm in it until they decide to hang it up, and I love that it's the only live comedy. How much of it is live doesn't really matter. I just love that it's the only live comedy. It's the only sporting event of comedy we have left, and I'm just still such a huge fan.
I love that metaphor. That's a perfect way of thinking about it.
Yeah, I totally agree, Rich. I think that Bill, who when I met you, you were telling me that you work in minor league baseball, and we were making some sports comparisons with SNL, which is really that you have all of the comedy clubs all around the world, who is probably they're probably like the single A or double A, and then you get to SNL, which I would say is kind of like the triple A of comedy. And you're on SNL and the spotlight's on you, and then you're really about to make the big leagues. And the people who graduate from SNL and make it big in movies and TV shows, I mean, that's kind of like the majors. So it's really interesting for people who love sports and love statistics to kind of compare that to SNL, where you have your top prospects who are about to enter the entertainment world are on SNL right now.
Yeah, that's right. And I think Chris Rock is one of the best examples of that. He was more of a single A guy when he was there because he never got on. I mean, he had his he had Nat X and he had Chillin', and that was it. I mean, you really didn't see him that much. And to see how he's progressed in the last 25 years since then, I mean, he's a megastar, and it's really gratifying. I mean, I'd put him and Julia Louis right up at the top as far as the people who you never really would have thought that they were going to make it, judged on their SNL years.
I was going to actually, Julia Louis-Dreyfus is a great example. I was actually going to ask how you would fit Jenny Slate into that metaphor.
That's a good one too. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she was only on for a year, so that's, does she fall more into that Damon Wayans, Ben Stiller category where she wasn't on at all? I mean, she had that infamous moment in her first episode, but
right.
Yeah, but that's a good comparison as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's Robert Downey Jr., Ben Stiller. Like, there's a lot of people who were not big name when they were on SNL necessarily, but then blew up afterwards. And I think Chris Rock perfectly falls in that category. But let's talk a little bit. I want to cover Chris Rock a little bit more and talk about his legacy and the history of himself on SNL. But first, I want to talk a little bit of our overall thoughts on, the premiere and season 46 in general. I thought what was really interesting was I was trying to think, we're in a very interesting time, let alone this being an election year. It's also the first time SNL is coming back since before the pandemic. And we heard a lot of, stuff from Lorne and different articles about the different ways they were going to be performing, including, wearing masks right up until the sketches. They were going to be having some first responders, which we were able to see on the floor. And as somebody who's actually been to SNL, been to an episode and sat on the floor, best seats you could ever ask for to be able to watch all those sketches. And for them to get that, I think is so commendable. So that was really exciting. But it was a little bit jarring to, you walk outside your house, you see everybody in a mask, you're used to it, but SNL is comfort food. And to see Chris Rock walk out on the stage and the band is in masks and you see the audience in masks, and you start thinking about, we're a show that talks about the history of SNL, and you start thinking, when people go back to Chris Rock's premiere episode of season 46, this will be the time when SNL was on in the middle of a pandemic, and you'll see it by the band wearing masks. So it's such a weird feeling. And Rich, I want to bring you in here. So how did you feel about, the atmosphere of season 46?
I was so great just to see them back in the studio again. I mean, and I like that they started with comedy. I wondered, looking back, will we look back and go, oh, that was the season that they all wore masks? Or will we look back and go, that was the beginning of when they all wore masks? That's another issue. But, my take on season premieres more broadly is, and I'd be so interested to see what you guys think, but as a fan, I always remember season premieres of SNL are usually pretty bumpy. They are often not great out of the gate. It's shaking the cobwebs off. It's people getting back. Non-fans will think, but I don't understand. They had all summer to write great sketches. Like, no, that's not how it works. Usually it's a little bit rougher. And then the ideas that percolated over the summer start making into sketches week 3, week 4, week 5. And I thought in general, this was a pretty solid season premiere from just straight up comedy. I thought that they did a really nice job coming back. And I think there was a lot of energy. There was a lot of sort of spotlight on this episode. And I thought they did a really nice job, both in tackling sort of big political stuff, but then also just doing the dumb name sketch and just like, we're just going to throw just pure silliness at you because you don't want just being bombarded with the issues of the day. So I really liked it. You know, I could say more, but I'd sort of stop there for a minute. It was really fun to see this come back like it did.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it was exciting to have SNL back. I would say that you may have been more pleasant about your experience with the premiere than I was. I may have had more anticipation. Could be partially because I am doing these roundtables now, and I'm excited to talk about it. And maybe I was expecting this big, amazing, spectacular all-time episode, which it wasn't. But it was so great to be back. And Bill, I mean, as someone who's seen 34 straight years of premieres, how does this compare for you?
You hate to make the comparison almost, but it feels like that kind of time capsule episode where, the show after 9/11 is always pointed to as, you remember the opening with Paul Simon and Giuliani, and you don't really remember what else happened in the show. And I feel like 10 years from now, regardless of what happens with masks and the pandemic, and I feel like that'll be the thing. You'll kind of remember the debate and the fact that Trump went into the hospital, and that will be your memory of it long after the season has passed. But I mean, overall, I mean, the show was I'm somewhere between you and Rich. I feel like it was a pretty good show to start. I groaned when they started doing the name thing for probably the 15th time in a different variation, but it ended up being really funny. And after update was not that great, but I mean, it was mediocre, but it was okay, and it was just great to have it back as well. I mean, the SNL at Home episodes were good, but this felt like we were back.
Yeah. What about you, Liz?
Well, my experience watching the episode was, I mean, I won't forget it just because it was pretty special to me. My mother's birthday was last week, so we were having a socially distanced gathering in my parents' backyard, and we basically it's like by thanks to a portable projector and my dad's laptop, we were able to project the episode and watch it live in my parents' backyard, which was lovely. And so I was watching it with my family, and my mom hadn't watched an episode of Saturday Night Live all the way through in years. And so, it was one of those things where I think the expectations were really low where I was, and yet people were really enjoying it. Like the name sketch, like Bill pointed out, is something they've gone to, is a well they've gone to before multiple times. But I was watching with people who hadn't, seen them play with that material before. And so it was really fresh to them, and it was really fun. I mean, honestly, the thing that really strikes me about the episode, and I kind of casually rewatched it today while I was dealing with other work stuff, was that it felt really light. Like, they had you have like this really, long cold open, and Chris Rock has his pretty long monologue comparatively. And then there weren't a ton of sketches. It was a pretty short episode comparatively, I guess. Like, so, I mean, that's my biggest takeaway. Is just like it felt like real SNL back in the studio, and that was, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I want that to be a good thing. I don't want that to be I really hope 2 weeks from now we don't hear stories about how, 3 band members tested positive. That's my nightmare, because I don't want to root for any of that. And yet it was nice to see people making comedy in front of a live audience. Hey, I've missed it as much as anyone.
Yeah. And you're totally right. We want everybody to be safe and healthy. I know that Lauren mentioned in one of the articles preseason about how if somebody did test positive, we could see an SNL shutdown for 2 weeks, which would obviously be very impactful. We want everyone to be safe and healthy, but also there wouldn't be a show when, we're supposed to be doing 5 straight weeks of SNL, which unto itself, as we go through the thing week by week, we're going to see how the quality of the show keeps moving forward. But sorry,
really
go ahead.
Really quickly. Isn't it like they're going to go 5 straight weeks, but if the election doesn't get sorted out, they might go more?
Yeah, so that's what the plan is right now. I can't imagine how that's going to happen. I would assume they were going to throw a week off somewhere in there, but the world is already crazy in 2020. So SNL being on for 7 or 8 straight weeks is the least of, I would be happy to see it, but
that is a possibility at this point.
Yeah, it is a possibility. So I guess we're going to see. Everything is touch and go right now. So, that's interesting. And I love all your thoughts on the opening. I think it's, Liz, you're talking about watching with your mom, who is more of a casual and hasn't seen SNL in a long time. And, I'm so curious to hear from people who haven't watched SNL in a long time and are coming back to the show now, because in election years, SNL always gets a really big spike. And now you have all these people at home. So you have so many eyes that are on the television. And I know that when I was going through the 45 years of SNL and taking my notes and doing everything, some of the most impactful sketches that I remembered were the debate sketches, because, there's so many memorable moments, whether it was like the Bush and Gore stuff or, back in the 80s with Reagan. And you remember all the cast members that played all the political figures. It was there's just something about it that feels really special. And you end up learning about, for people who are not such political people in general, you end up learning about politics through comedy in a way. And I think there's a lot of people who watch SNL to get their news. So I want to send it to Rich, because Rich, had a comment to me prior to the show about, them bringing in celebrities to play different political figures. And this is an important way to kind of start our discussion about this big debate sketch that we had, which went on, a very long time. But Rich, let me bring you in here to talk a little bit about, them bringing in Jim Carrey and Alec Baldwin and all the celebrities of the last few years.
Yeah, this is probably a bigger conversation that I was mentioning to you of, I love this cast, but I do think that we in the last few years have had a star problem in SNL. That I could argue how much I love every single cast member, but who's the star? Who's the Will Ferrell? Who's the, Kristen Wiig? Who's the John Belushi? And other than, I would say Kate, we really don't have someone who's broken out of the noise. And I don't know that that's necessarily because we have a poor group of people. I really do wonder this pattern that we have, which is very effective for short-term ratings. We needed Donald Trump. We're not going to stick with Mikey Day. We're going to bring in Alec Baldwin. We need someone to play Joe Biden. We're not even going to try one of the SNL cast members. We're going to bring in, Woody Harrelson, or we're going to try it with John Mulaney, or we're going to go outside. We're going to bring in, Jim Carrey, Camilla Harris. We're not going to give it to any of the cast members. We're just going to bring back an alumni. Great for ratings. You're bringing back amazing, talented people. I mean, I could watch these people do almost anything, but I really do wonder if it's hurting the long-term, the cast of the show, because if you had brought in some big A-level actor to play George Bush instead of giving, Will Ferrell a shot because Will Ferrell wasn't good, or if you always brought back Amy Poehler to play, Hillary Clinton and never gave it to Kate McKinnon, would Kate McKinnon ever have broken out? I really think that there's a problem. If we don't have the right cast members to play these characters, then we don't have the right cast members. But I don't think that's the case. I think we're just not giving them enough of a shot to sort of make their mark.
I have a quick question. No, I have a quick question. I just have a question, which is, Do we know if was there a cast member who really wanted to step up and play Joe Biden? Like, is there someone that we thought that would have been a perfect fit?
I don't know, but I do know that when it came to the Trump decision to go with Baldwin a few years ago, we had cast members that auditioned for Trump for like many summers, and they kept going back with Alec year after year. And I know that they ultimately transitioned from Hammond over to Alec Baldwin, but I think even like Beck Bennett auditioned as Trump, and there were other cast members. There were other people in the comedy scene that did amazing Trump impressions. And I remember at the time, people were commenting, why aren't you bringing on this person as even just a cast member and then have them play Trump instead of bringing back Alec Baldwin all the time to do it? And it seems like just the path is they want, and as a journalist, Liz, I'm so curious your opinion on this, because it seems like in a way sometimes they are going for the big headline, which is Jim Carrey is now coming back to SNL to play Joe Biden, as opposed to talking about the cast themselves.
I mean, that is like, I think I'm blanking on how Collider covered it on Sunday morning this week, but I think it literally was basically, here's Jim Carrey's impression of Joe Biden. Like, that was the news for us. Like, and yeah, like if it was here's Beck Bennett's impression of Joe Biden, it probably would not have picked up the same level of coverage. Like, it is a fascinating question because, like, it's also the question of what is Saturday Night Live? What is the ultimate goal of Lorne Michaels with Saturday Night Live? Is it like to get headlines? Is it to get attention? Is it to get, or is it to make good comedy? And, you kind of sometimes have to question whether or not it's the former or the latter. And in the case of the thing with Jim Carrey is like, he is an amazing performer, and like just you could teach an entire masterclass on the way he uses his eyes, which is not something you normally say about a comedian. Like, that's not normally a thing you pinpoint, but he's a master. So yeah, I don't know. Like, it's tough. Like, as a journalist, I would say bringing in someone like Jim Carrey to play Joe Biden is easily the better news play, easily the way to get attention. And in this particular case was very funny. And in general, when they've done these stunt casting moves, it has been pretty funny. That being said, clearly we all hit Alec Baldwin as Trump fatigue a while back. I feel like if I'm wrong about that, please let me know.
You're not.
But I feel like that novelty has gone away quite a bit. And I mean, not to be very political, but would I just be happy if we just never did any Trump sketches ever again? That'd be fine with me. But even if we have to do Trump sketches at this point, like, I don't need a Baldwin impression anymore. Like, that's done.
And
yeah.
I should say, I thank you. I agree. By the way, Jim Carrey was great. I mean,
yes.
No question about it. He was great. I misspoke. I said Mikey Day. It was Taron Killam who originally played Donald Trump. I think until, ironically, the Donald Trump episode when he hosted and they had Daryl Hammond come back, and then that passed off the baton to Daryl Hammond, which was unfortunate. Because, by the way, I thought Taron Killam, when he did it with Cecily Strong as Melania, was a really fun pairing that we haven't had since then.
I thought Daryl. I feel like I maybe like read some, like, there was some bad blood about how Daryl Hammond was really disappointed that he didn't get to keep doing Trump. Like,
well, I know that Trump himself had said that Daryl does the best Trump, and now I don't know if that now I'm good with Alec doing it forever. Yeah, I know. And then so the question is did they steer in the direction of, like, maybe we should have Alec do it and be somebody who Trump doesn't necessarily want to be playing him, which is a whole other conversation. But I really think, for me as the stats guy, I think Jim Carrey did a great job. I think they were trying to play basically, I always try and think of, like, what is the thing that they're going for? And to me, it seems like they're going for the Joe Biden that is trying to control himself And that's going to be what Jim Carrey's thing is for the next few weeks, which is like, don't let yourself go, Joe. Like, don't do it. Don't let it out. And I think like that will be Jim Carrey's play on Joe Biden. But I'm less interested in actually the quality of the impression and more about this conversation that we're having, which is what is SNL's plan for impressions moving forward? Because when Trump was played by Baldwin in 2016, this was the greatest thing ever. Everyone was super excited about it, but everyone kept saying, well, is this sustainable? Because you're not going to have Alec Baldwin come to the show every single week. 4 years later, we're there and Alec Baldwin is at the show every single week. So, if Biden wins the election, are we looking at Jim Carrey now being, basically another SNL cast member? And Bill, I'm going to bring you in here. If you're good. So tell me, Bill, like, what do you think about Biden, Trump, and where we're going with this impression?
I hope we're not digging another hole. I mean, I'm not a Baldwin as Trump hater. I think, as the others were saying, I think Daryl did such a great job with it. And they could have found someone in the cast. And I think if isn't Sudeikis out of the country right now because of Ted Lasso?
I mean, they're done filming. Like,
they're done. I thought they started on season 2, but
Oh, okay.
Anyway,
I could be wrong. Yeah.
I don't know if that was part of what the thinking was, because I mean, Sudeikis is a big enough star, I think, to have continued to play it if they were going to bring someone in from the outside. But having said that, I can't see Carrey doing this for 4 or 8 years. Like, that doesn't seem possible. So they're going to have to find someone in the cast that can do it in a sustainable way.
Yeah, I actually think. So sorry, I was going to say, like, I agree with you, Bill. I just think that this is potentially what SNL is going for from now on, which is bringing in some type of outside celebrity who they're going to have for the next 4 years. And it's just, you never would have seen that in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s. No. It was about the stars, like Rich said. And we talked last week about how there's 20 cast members, tied for the most cast members SNL's ever had. I don't know if SNL is as interested in producing stars as they once were, or getting the headlines. I'm sorry, Liz, you can go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, I mean, John, you just said it. No one thought that we would get Alec Baldwin back week after week for Trump. And it's happened. Like, it hasn't happened every week. And frankly, I love actually when they write sketches around the fact that they can't have Trump, but they do, like, actually, but they start doing political news. I think it's honestly, it's led to more subtle political comedy. Like when they can't just like have Trump in there saying ridiculous Trump things. So I don't like write off the idea that they could just basically bring back Jim Carrey for a little while. Like, I don't think Kidding's coming back anytime soon. I don't know what he's doing otherwise. Like, anyways, that's basically the only point I wanted to make. But yeah, the idea of like whether or not like, SNL is really interested in being a star machine is interesting, if only because like, this fall, as far as I understand, we're going to be seeing like a very minimal input from like a lot of the cast members. Like, Keenan is shooting his sitcom. Kate McKinnon has like multiple projects going on. Adie Bryant is shooting a new season of Shrill. Like, they're all of this is being built into the show, and like they're trying to work around all these different schedules because of the pandemic. But it is interesting to really, because like theoretically, like there are no major stars in the show, but at the same time, we're not going to have a lot of the major cast members because they're all doing different projects because they're all now pretty well known.
Yeah. And I would say to the point of, with I think when we've had seasons where we have stars, the ratings stay consistent week to week, regardless of the host. When we have casts like this that are very competent, very capable, but are not stars, you watch the ratings completely dip and rise depending on who the host is. I don't think that's a great model for SNL. I want an SNL where we as the fans and the casuals just want to watch it every week to see what Mikey Day's going to do, not to see what Chris Rock is going to do with Mikey Day standing behind him.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Like, I mean, and I think like when SNL has been at its best for me is when it's given wild comedians like Andy Samberg or Mikey Day like the opportunity to just kind of, or Kyle Mooney, to just do, you know, whatever ridiculous idea comes to their heads.
Yep.
Yeah, and Bill, I want to bring you in here because as also like a sports guy, I mean, this is really, really interesting. That, you know, we talk about the evolution of sports in whether it's baseball or football or whatever, and you have historians who talk about the evolution of those sports and say that, you know, defenses improve, offenses improve, and they find new ways to do things. And whether it's like, let's talk about baseball, for example. You know, you talk about shifting in baseball. Defenses now know where players are going to hit the ball, so they shift, and now you see, you know, less hits. And, you know, there's historians who say this isn't good for the game, and then they should not let these things happen. And to bring it back to SNL, I'm just wondering if it's, you know, for all of us who have watched SNL for so long, if we're like, you know, Dana Carvey's old man who's like, you know, things aren't the same as they used to be, and you know, we want it to be just like it is, or do we have to look at SNL in 2020 as just SNL has evolved past the point where they're making stars and instead they're making headlines?
That's a very good point. I think they've gone a little bit too far in the star direction. I mean, you know, it's been talked about so much, but I mean, you think about the casts in the 70s and the 80s where there was 7 cast members, 7, no cameos, no special guests. You know, if they had a special guest, they were actually in the montage. You know, when Jan Hooks would come back and do Hillary, you know, that was part of the montage. When Dana Carvey came back and did George Bush the First in a Chris Rock episode, no less, he was listed as a special guest in the montage. I mean, that's how special those kind of things were. And while it's okay that it's evolved, I think we've gone a little bit too far with, you know, having so many people. I mean, you think about those debates last spring where they're bringing on 12 or 15 people who aren't even in the cast. You've got a cast of 14 people already. You know, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If that's what it is, then that's what it is. But I prefer the old days.
Does anyone else want to touch on that, or should we move on to Chris Rock?
Let's talk about Chris Rock.
All right. So I was excited to see Chris. I mean, Bill, and feel free to jump in here where if I mess anything up. But I want to kind of, you know, before we kind of, you know, talk about this week, let me kind of give the background on Chris Rock and what his history is with the show for those who aren't aware, because there are a lot of people who might be checking this out who have watched for the last few years and don't know about the history of Chris Rock on SNL. And I'll kind of do the quick summary, which is you had your original cast, which was there for 5 years from 75 to 80. Lorne left the show and they had this new cast, which was the Eddie Murphy era from 80 to 85. Which wasn't seen as the original SNL or the quality of the original SNL. SNL comes back. Lorne basically has this one cast that he puts together, which is the very famous Robert Downey Jr., Anthony Michael Hall cast, John Lovitz, Dennis Miller, Nora Dunn, and it wasn't a great year. This is season 11 of the show, and it very famously ends with them all burning in a fire in a sketch where Lorne goes and saves John Lovitz from the fire and brings him onto season 12, which is the Phil Hartman, Dana Carvey, the original cast that you love, Bill, which we were talking about, which is people say is the best cast ever. And this cast was the first time since 1975 that for 3 or 4 years, they pretty much kept the same cast. And they had, 7 or 8 different people: Kevin Nealon, Jan Hooks, Victoria Jackson, Nora Dunn, and they, people were in love with this cast, and they brought on a couple people, Mike Myers, Ben Stiller, but it wasn't really until this cast started leaving that they decided they were going to bring on these other people, who coincidentally all ended up being major stars: Chris Rock, Chris Farley, Rob Schneider, Adam Sandler, David Spade, Tim Meadows, Julia Sweeney. They brought on this cast, and you ended up having a very large cast where you had the Phil Hartman era combined with the Chris Rock, Sandler, Farley era. And Chris Rock was on for about 3 years. And like you said, Bill, he didn't really make it on SNL the way that he should have. I've heard many interviews with Chris Rock talking about his time on the show. And he did mention that at the time, the writing room wasn't as diverse as it is now, which could have played a large factor in him not getting sketches on the show that he probably should have, because we weren't able to see the star that Chris Rock is. People loved him and he ended up coming back. And I'm very fortunate that, he's had a great relationship with the show for 45 years, but there is a chance we would have lost a star in the same way that, people say that Garrett Morris didn't get enough shine back in the day. So, Bill, jump in here if you can. Tell me a little bit about, your opinion about the history of Chris Rock on SNL.
I think you nailed it as far as what could have been. And not only was the writing room not diverse, but he was the first African-American cast member in 5 years. I mean, that's crazy to think about now. So not only did they not have a diverse writing room, but they didn't have anybody who could write for him. You know what I'm saying? There was nothing to come from. I mean, the last African-American before him was Denitra Vance, and she got no screen time. So you have to go back to Eddie to even see anything as far as that goes. But, they made up for it when he came back. I mean, he hosted 3 years after he left, and he infamously cameoed on the Chris Farley hosted episode because they didn't think Farley was going to make it through the week. So I think since then, they've really tried to make amends as far as his history. I mean, and he's got some of and besides the Farley cameo, I mean, he cameoed the episode after the election in 2016 with Dave Chappelle and with the famous skit with all the white people in the room wondering how this could have happened. And, coming back with Eddie last year. So I think they've made amends as far as the history with him, but it would have been great to see what else he could have done back in the day with him, 90 to 93.
Can I ask a question of the panel? I really enjoyed Chris Rock as a host this week. That being said, did he do were there any sketches that he did that were like only Chris Rock could do this sketch? Like, was there any? Because I personally feel like everything he got a chance to do, he did beautifully, but nothing felt like essentially Chris Rock.
I would actually take that question and one up it. In all of the times Chris Rock has hosted, has he done a memorable character? Because I love Chris Rock as a stand-up comedian. And
right.
What you buy when you bring on Chris Rock is a killer monologue that is both funny, it's insightful, it has a very strong point of view. But other than Nat X, which I remember very vividly as a kid, I cannot remember one single sketch that Chris Rock was pivotal in. Like you said, the Dave Chappelle moment was fantastic, but that was a Dave Chappelle sketch where Chris Rock was just the fun, plus one in that sketch. I don't think that Chris Rock was ever a great sketch comedian. I don't think he pretends to be, and I don't think that we've seen it in the 3 times that he's hosted.
Yeah, I think with, his first hosting gig, they did their normal trope of dragging out Nat X, and they even did Just Chillin' without Farley. They had Jim Brewer play his role, which was ridiculous. But yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think they don't really have any place to put him in a good sketch where it's just, Chris Rock powered sketch.
I mean, he was amazing. He was an amazing utility player. Like
yes.
I for the record, I will never get over for the names sketch. I don't know what we're officially calling it, but
it is a news/super spreader event.
Yes. But making Pete Davidson stand behind Chris Rock while Chris Rock is saying these names is like ultimate trolling. Like just
yes.
A+.
Yes.
Yeah. And look, Liz, I think it's a great question. I think that the answer probably is no. There was not a great Chris Rock moment in terms of his sketches. I would say that what everybody was looking forward to with Chris Rock was going to be his monologue.
Which is great.
that was the moment where he gets to be himself. I watched Chris Rock on Fallon. I believe it was not last week, but the week prior. And, everybody loves Chris Rock's ability to just, talk to a crowd. And I know that Michael Che and Colin Jost were also on Fallon and they were talking about it. And I think just like his commentary, his personality, he's never going to, take over the show in terms of sketch performers. There's amazing sketch performers from the history of the show, but they brought Chris Rock back as a symbol of, in a way, of SNL is back. And this is the guy who's going to, hold your hand through the premiere and make you have a little bit of fun. But I wouldn't say that he added quality to any of the sketches where you couldn't have put another host in there.
Right. I just want to make it clear for the record, I'm not trying to bag on Chris Rock at all. And I'll make a point of saying that I've seen 9 episodes of the season of Fargo, and he's extraordinary in it. Like, it takes a little time for him to really sink into the role, but once he does, like, you believe him as a murdering gangster. Like, so no disrespect meant to Mr. Rock.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I'm happy to hear good things, so I'm excited to see that. Let's kind of talk a little bit about, we talked about the sketches that Chris Rock was in. Let's talk a little bit about, the cast and the overall episode themselves. Like we said, we're not going to do on this show, the stats panel. We're not going to do a sketch by sketch recap, but I do want to kind of go around the panel and talk about moments that stood out for you throughout the evening, things that you thought were interesting. I did send everybody on the panel some notes. So if anybody has like interesting notes that they saw or things that had happened, throughout the evening that they loved, I will say that one of the things that stood out to me was how many sketches Ego was in. That was really nice to see for someone who's in their 3rd year on the show, really making a mark. She was in the most sketches on the show, except for Keenan. They were tied. So that was interesting. I also, one of the thoughts that I had was we were talking about, we didn't know who was going to be there actually because other people were filming. And I was waiting, is Kate McKinnon going to be there? Is A.D. Bryan going to be there? And they were more in the back half of the show, but they were there. So that was nice to see. So I'll start with you, Rich. Tell me a little bit about any moments that stood out to you.
One of the things I thought was interesting, it just really caught me, during the stay-at-home episodes where everyone was filming themselves, Chloe Fineman did, I think, at least one, maybe 2 different pieces where she was playing multiple characters, multiple impressions in one piece. I think it was like a master class and a couple other things, which made sense given the circumstances. I was very surprised to see in a true SNL episode with the largest cast in the history of SNL that Chloe Fineman is doing a very fun Drew Barrymore impression, but then she's also playing almost all of the other characters in the impression. I don't know that I love that as a pattern, but I will say it was very intriguing to me that I haven't seen that very often, other than maybe Dana Carvey playing both, George Bush and Ross Perot in a live sketch. That was very surprising to me. I don't know what to make of it, but it struck me as an odd choice. Not a bad choice, but an odd choice. I don't know if anyone else felt any way about that or if it's just me.
Well, I feel fairly confident. I should definitely, I apologize for not knowing this officially, but I happened to be at the Montreal Just for Laughs Festival several years ago. Not several years ago, but 2016, 2017-ish. And I feel like I definitely saw Chloe Fineman at a New Faces showcase. And part of her, you get 5 minutes to basically present your talent, and part of her thing was the Big Little Lies audition room, and she did all of those characters. I think my strong feeling is that a big part of her SNL audition was I can do Drew, I can do Nicole Kidman, I can do all of these people, and she can, as we saw. She's amazing. So yeah, I didn't have so much beyond the fact that I knew this is your SNL, audition tape as a sketch for the show. Beyond that, I didn't have a real problem with it. I thought it was, and I thought actually it was relatively low key given those options, and the fact that she, God, was it? I'm now blanking, but there was another cast member who came in at one point to do somebody, so it wasn't just her.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's gonna bug me. But yeah, I liked the sketch, but I also felt like it was. I mean, it's similar to the like the sketches they've done before, where it's audition tapes for random projects here, so somebody can bust out their Alan Arkin for whatever reason.
Yeah, and those sketches are always really interesting. Chloe Fineman, we were talking about her playing Drew Barrymore, and that is actually a really interesting historical impression on the show. I mean, that Drew Barrymore has been played by Jan Hooks, Kate Hudson, Rachel Dratch, Katie Holmes, Kristen Wiig, and Heidi Gardner, someone who's still on the cast. So, that's somebody who's been played by a lot of different people. There was a very funny sketch back in season 26 where Jimmy Fallon played Tom Green and Drew Barrymore was played by Katie Holmes. So that's one that's like, I suggest that people look back if they're interested in old Drew Barrymore impressions. One of the interesting things that I thought was really cool for those who are like historical SNL fans is if you look at the Drew Barrymore set that they put together, and I haven't seen the actual Drew Barrymore show, so I assume they're just parodying the actual set, but it looks a lot like the Weekend Update set from the 70s with all the clocks on the wall. Bill, I don't know if you saw the same thing, but I was looking at this and I'm like waiting for Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin to come out and do point counterpoint.
Yes, I did notice that. And it is based off her real set, which is hilarious. I don't know what she's going for, but good luck to her.
Yeah. Bill, but tell me, what about you? Anything stood out for you from the night? Any sketches? And
I would say the same as far as the Drew Barrymore. I mean, I think she does the best impression that we've seen on the show, other than Kate Hudson. I think the Inside the Actors Studio with Will and Kate Hudson was vintage. But I think, I mean, Chloe doing all the impressions was an interesting take. I agree with that. Bottom of your face was phenomenal. I feel like they're setting Chris Redd up to be the next Andy Samberg as far as the digital short tropes. But he did such a great job with that.
Let's stop down there for a second, Bill, because I was going to say something about that, which is I heard that SNL was in the summer looking for space in New York that wasn't on, in Studio 8H more than they've ever had, because they were going to be filming a lot of pre-tapes for the season. Pre-tapes, actually a lot of people think that SNL has moved to more pre-tapes over the last few years, but actually pre-tapes have been around since the 70s. So that's something that's really, big. But I am wondering about, an example like the bottom of your face. I'm wondering if we are going to get like a half pre-tape, half sketch type of thing moving forward, just based on how many sketches that people can be together. I don't know what the protocols are, but that's like an interesting something to watch for. Yes, Rich, I'll bring you in on that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, what we've heard a lot about is the big issue with COVID is the logistics issue. Studio 8H was not meant for Saturday Night Live. It was only given to them because no one thought that the show was going to rate even a 1. So it's way too small. And, they said, that only so many crew members can be on the set. The cast members can't be on the set when the crew members are in between. So you're really going to be relying on pre-tapes as a way to change scenery around. So, I think at one point we moved from 2 to 4 as the standard a few years ago. I know a lot of cast members really were sort of respectfully pushing back about how it made the week just so much more challenging, because you're usually shooting the pre-tapes overnight and then coming back the next morning for rehearsals and stuff. So I think that is going to be a challenge, but I do think you're right. I think we're going to see a lot more of that just because it makes the physical production, during COVID a lot easier.
Well, I mean, like literally in studio, they have to destroy sets, not destroy, but like they have to take down sets immediately after a sketch is over because there's no room. They're literally building and rebuilding sets during the live show because it's just a tiny, tiny space. Like, so yeah, of course they're going to try to do that.
Yeah, see, I remember when I went to a show during season 42, and I was in the hallway about to enter the floor where the stage is, the main stage, and this was between dress and the main show, and you see, sets flying all over the place. People, we already talk about logistically how difficult it is that SNL pulls off a live sketch comedy show every single week, and you barely notice the mistakes that are made. It must be so much more complicated for them to do it with all the logistics involved, and for good reason. But I can't imagine how difficult this is for the crew. When I was there, like I said, people were running around all over the place.
Yeah.
And a quick shout out to SNL in that in any of the heydays, starting in 76 through all of the major casts, when it was printing money for NBC, they easily could have demanded a bigger stage. There's no reason that if Lorne Michaels had, they built a stage for, Jimmy Fallon, for Jay Farrow, for Jay Leno, they easily could have done that. And, to their, true to their form, they're just like, nope, we want to be an 8H no matter what. And same here. They easily could have moved to, a bigger sound stage. They could have brought people into, or used multiple sound stages in order to sort of, cut down, the virus, and had multiple studio audiences watching via cameras and stuff. And they're not doing it. So more power to them.
I mean, given the fact that they could potentially do that now, I feel like is worth considering. But yeah, no, you're totally right.
Yeah, and it's exciting to see the stage that we're all comfortable with, but it would have been cool if they did something. I know that they have the partitions between the different band members, but I mean, it would have been cool to see what they could have done with the SNL stage. I don't believe, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe they've actually changed the SNL stage probably in like 15 years at least, maybe 20 years.
Yeah, we're going on almost 20, I believe.
Yeah.
They changed the musical stage, but they haven't changed home base.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Seth Meyers isn't doing anything on floor 6 on Saturday nights. Why not take advantage of that?
Yeah, that would be cool. So go ahead.
I was going to say, like, I just want to quickly say, if we're still talking, if we're still kind of in the phase of talking about sketches.
Sure.
I just want to say the NBA bubble sketch just fell apart for me, and I did not like it.
That was an interesting one. I was wondering if that was a way to cycle through a lot of, we don't know what was cut, but they had a lot of cast members in that sketch, and sometimes it's a way to kind of get more people out there. Right. And that might be the problem with having 20 cast members is I'm not even sure if Melissa Villaseñor was there on Saturday night, but I didn't see her out there. I don't think she was in any sketches as far as I know. And she may have had some stuff cut, and that happens. But I think Cecily's part in the cold open, I believe that was a pre-tape. So yes. I don't think she was there either. But the NBA bubble sketch, we're talking about, probably there were 9 cast members plus Megan Thee Stallion and Chris Rock in there. So I think that was probably the reason for it. As an NBA guy myself, I've heard the stories about being in the bubble and how hard it is for players not to see people. But yeah, it was an interesting commentary.
It just needed a stronger beginning, honestly. Yeah. Like it's a stronger beginning to like kick it off, like would have held it together. But like, just like, Here are women who want to sleep with NBA players, and like doing that parade didn't work as well as it could have. And I just wanted to bitch about that for a moment, and I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's turn on a brighter note. Was there anything that you really loved though?
That's I love the name sketch. I thought I think the name sketch is a good example of like, if we're gonna make comedy during this time, and we're gonna lean into things that we already know and love as familiar, but we also want to acknowledge the clusterfork we're all living in right now. Like, do the name sketch, I felt like it hit the right balance. Let's like, it was all based in what's going on right now, but at the same time still, was a ridiculous bit of comedy that made everyone I watched it with laugh.
Yeah, when you do a sketch like that, it's all about writing. You live and die by every dumb name you come up with. And, and I think, having, going back to Steve Carell's commencement speech, in 2008, and the talk show of people who had unfortunate names. Like, I thought it was a pretty good list of names. Dumb, yes, but I thought it was pretty good dumb.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And I would have put money on the first sketch that we were going to have coming out of the commercial break after the monologue was going to be a recurring sketch. I think that is something that SNL loves to do, especially in premieres, because there's something familiar about it. It's like, okay, we're seeing characters we know. I thought maybe we were going to go with some type of paranormal activity sketch that they've done with Kate McKinnon many times, a encounter one. I thought that was kind of maybe what we were looking for if I was going to guess. This is the second time we've seen this legal change of name sketch and different variations on this is a Mikey Day specific sketch where he's done the Matt Shat name before and different ones over the last few years. But you know what? That's what they chose. And, like I said, I think that some of us watched the episode and we thought that we really enjoyed the premiere. I know, Rich, you said it was great for a premiere. And, I would say cautiously disappointed a little bit, but overall, I'm happy that SNL's back. And I would love to know from the panel if there was any other moments and sketches that stood out to you, because if not, I would go on to Weekend Update a little bit.
I'll just give a quick shout out to Bowen Yang. I really like that character on Weekend Update. I mean, I think it's one of the few Weekend Update characters that's not Mad Libs, that every week we're just slotting in the new funny word or funny phrase. I think the TikTok stuff, I think he's both playing a big, broad character at 11, which is what you want to see in a Weekend Update feature, but it was smart, and I think there's a real smart, sophisticated thinking behind China's relationship with America, packaged in this very broad, fun, silly character. So I thought that was great.
I mean, honestly, the best hiring decision that SNL has made in the last, I'll throw out 3 years as a random number. I don't know. But Bowen Yang is the best thing that's happened to SNL in a long time. He's made the show inarguably better. And the episodes that use him more are the better episodes.
Yeah, and unfortunately, he was only in one thing, but it was great what he was in. I will say that for his, I believe it's his second year on the show. For me, I just hope they don't typecast him too much. I'm not going to get too much into it, but I really want to see him, flourish in different kinds of roles. I'd love to see how he does as, a leading character in different, group sketches, as opposed to just being one guy who walks in for a minute and says a line that everyone's like, oh, that's Bowen's thing. So I love to see how he does with that.
I feel like the thing I've noticed in his appearances so far is that he seems to be really smart about what he does. I forget. It's I think in the airport sushi sketch from last year, I feel like there was a role I was maybe they were leading. I wish I remember the sketch better, but they were leading up to a bit where I was like, oh, this is definitely where Bowen Yang's going to come in, and instead he came in for this other bit, which was impacted, which was a definite reference to his ethnicity, but was unexpected and smart in a way that I hadn't called and hadn't predicted. And I feel like he's a savvy enough performer where he's not going to let himself get put into any sort of box. I think he's going to really, and I really hope that he gets the opportunity to push into new areas over the season.
Yeah, I agree. And I believe this is maybe the second Asian American cast member they've had. I'm trying to think, but it's nice to have some, it's nice to have diversity. We're trying to make everything in the world more representative, more diverse. And I think it's nice that he's on there, because I know that in the past, when they've had to play Asian roles, they've given it to people on the crew. and they haven't actually brought in somebody to be a part of the cast. And I think Bowen is great. So I'm happy to have him on the show. But I do want to talk a little bit about Weekend Update before we kind of move forward into the future of the next few weeks. So I'm curious around the panel. My relationship with Weekend Update for now is I loved Seth Meyers. Seth Meyers was always like my guy when he was on SNL. He's part of the cast that I absolutely loved. But when Colin and Michael came on Weekend Update, I wasn't sure, it was a very rocky start, and it's been very well chronicled over the years. But the chemistry the two of them have built is so wonderful, and it's so great for the show. So much so that they are actually like, if they continue throughout the entire season together, I believe they will be breaking records for the longest Weekend Update correspondence ever in the history of the show, which is really exciting and really cool. But it's taken a while for them to get there, and I'm happy with where they're at. And I'm curious if we go around the panel, what your guys' opinion is on Weekend Update right now. Anyone jump in?
I mean, I'll say I agree that I think my favorite aspect of them as a pairing is their chemistry and the fact that they seem to genuinely have a good time. I enjoy kind of like the inside jokes, or the feeling that we're hearing an inside joke, or like that sort of element. Like I like those parts, and I don't want Michael Che to yell at me on Instagram, so I'm not going to say anything else.
Yeah. What about you, Rich?
I always thought one of the people who got one of the rawest deals in Weekend Update was Cecily Strong, because I thought that when she was first on, I thought she was better than Colin Jost out of the gate, and then they made that change, and I thought that was a real shame. I think that she would have been someone that would be a star right now if they had not made that change. I'll risk Twitter because I don't go on it that much. I think Michael Che is an amazing stand-up comedian. I think that his energy and pace of stand-up comedy has always been a little bit at odds with the pace of Weekend Update and the boom. And Che is much more of a sort of sit back and kind of lean back kind of comedian. And I think I've always kind of struggled to sort of get that vibe for me, that sort of the flow exactly right. I think he's changed a little bit over the years, and also the overall format with Colin has changed to accommodate him over the years. I think it's working better. So I think that they're both very good. But I don't know if I would consider this like one of the great teamings of Weekend Update. But very solid. And again, they live and die by the jokes. I am bummed that they don't have as many bits as a duo that a lot of other weekend, we don't have other, other than making each other read jokes that they wrote for each other, which is absolutely hilarious. I don't think that there's as many when we look for a bit from Weekend Update, it's always from a third person. We're rarely ever waiting for the bit from Michael and Colin. So, but certainly, I mean, a lot of really funny jokes this weekend in a lot of things that, without getting political, that just, I'm like, I'll be repeating that tomorrow. So it was good.
Yeah. What about you, Bill?
Yeah, absolutely. To continue what they've both said, I think they complement each other really well. I would put the comparison with Tina and Jimmy, with the contrasts in their styles. I mean, Tina was always the straight-laced, and Jimmy was always the one cracking himself up. Che doesn't do that as much, but it's more of a, just he finds a way to tell the joke in such a different way than Jost does. So I think that's worked really well for them over the years. It was definitely rocky the first 2 or 3 years, but I think they've come around, and especially in a week like this where you didn't know where the line was because of everything that was going on and all the changes that they had to make, probably mostly the Weekend Update and the debate. I think they did a really good job this week.
Yeah, that's true. They only found out about Trump having COVID so late in the week that they had to adjust some things, I'm sure. So that's great. And I think that one of the things that people who, I have some friends who watch the show very casually, and they don't love the pairing of Michael and Colin as much as pairings in the past, like you said, like Tina and Jimmy. And one of the things that I've said is that you can see the friendship that Colin and Michael have, And in a way, that's exactly what we want from our SNL cast. Is we want to know the relationships of the people on the show. We want to know, who's friends with who, and who people like and who people, maybe don't like as much. And I think that their friendship comes across the screen, at least for me, that I describe it to some people who watch the show, that I love the pairing because I feel like I'm friends with these people, because that's the way that they're talking to the outsiders. And that's why I think this works so well. And that's why I'm excited to see my friends, Colin and Michael, help me through this election time, which is about to be very crazy. But they're the ones who are kind of going to, on the weekends, tell me jokes about it and make me feel better about it. And I think that's what's great about the pairing. So that's pretty much our episode, and I'm thrilled to be able to have talked about it with you guys. I want to just do some brief thoughts about moving forward. Right now, we have 2 hosts that are booked for episode 2 and 3, Bill Burr and Issa Rae. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. And now we have a couple of first-time hosts coming in. My opinion, or my impression of what we were going to be doing, was we were going to have former cast members. We were going to have people who hosted the show before. I didn't think that they were going to go for the first time hosts so early in the season, given all the changes to the show that they're making. I figured they were going to have people come in who knew how the show worked. So I'm a little bit surprised about it, but also excited to see some new hosts. So Liz, tell me, do you know about Bill Burr and Issa Rae?
I know of them well. I've seen their work in other mediums beyond sketch comedy. I feel like both of them are very capable comedians and very adaptable. I think Bill Burr, Bill Burr fit into the world of of Breaking Bad pretty seamlessly. Like, I'm not worried about his ability to fit into a sketch. I don't think either of them are going to come in with big personalities and big ideas. I think I'm honestly I remember being really disappointed by the Awkwafina episode last year, because she's so funny and such a strong comedian. But I feel like the episode the sketches that were written for her just did not serve her personality and her talents very well. And I'm worried that Issa Rae is going to hit the same wall, because I think Issa Rae does a lot of very, very great things very well. And you just have to lean into them, and which is what you should do for all comedians. Like John Cena, John Cena is very funny if you write the right things for him. So, anyways, I'm looking forward to both of them. But I am also expecting them to be, honestly, much like the Chris Rock episode, more dependent on the sketches than the actual host for what's going to drive the conversation.
Yeah. What about you, Rich?
I think Bill Burr, like Liz was saying, I think we're going to get very much what we saw this week. You're going to get a very solid monologue. You're going to get a great monologue, probably with a very different POV than Chris Rock brought to the show about current events, which is good that we're going to mix it up. He is a talented actor, whether, Breaking Bad or The Mandalorian or whatever. He's very competent. I doubt we're going to have any iconic characters that come out of that. And Issa Rae, I think is also very talented, but I don't know if she's got experience in front of a live audience. And her show is much more subtle and measured and small. And I do think that actresses who are known for comedy, if they are single camera comedy, I do think sort of struggle to make a mark. I think that they are very good in the sketches that are written for them, but rarely do we remember them as iconic characters. I almost think, a John Cena or a Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I am no fan of the WWE, but that is an unbelievable proving ground for Saturday Night Live, because you just know how to go to 11 in a way that a lot of, comedic actors and actresses from single camera don't. So I think that she's going to fit in well. And I think she'll do some good stuff. I don't know that it will, I don't think that her being booked is necessarily exciting to me, other than I'll be interested to see what they do with her. And I think there'll be a lot of, connections with, other cast members that I could see being really fun.
Could I just throw out, what do you think are the odds of a Family Feud sketch with her in the cast?
Ooh.
Because I feel like that's I feel like every time they've had like a black cast member, a black host, they've gone to that well, just because then they can seat an entire lineup for Family Feud. I have no idea what the premise would be. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, we'll mark it down as a prediction, and when we get there,
Yes.
I'll take note of it.
I will say that the Keenan doing Family Feud was the turning point from when I went, I am so sick of Keenan, please retire, to, oh my God, he makes me laugh with just a look as Steve Harvey. And now, one of my absolute favorites. And that I could watch that, just him as Steve Harvey for what up with that? That is a great sketch.
And
go ahead, Liz.
Yeah.
I just need to hear. So how did you react to the moment in that Celebrity Family Feud sketch where I think it's Chris Redd as Jordan Peele is like, oh, you got to move on from sketch comedy at some point.
Oh, so great. Yeah.
One of the show's best meta moments.
Yes,
yes,
definitely. And I love those. And if I can super fan about Rich for a second, I do remember I used to listen to his show with Rob Sesternino, and they would do these postseason awards. I think it was Rich. And you guys would make predictions for the upcoming season before you knew anything about cast changes. And I remember every year you would say, this has to be Keenan's last year. I mean, this has to be. And then all of a sudden Keenan would show up again.
Unbelievable. There are junior young kids watching this show who were not alive when Keenan was not on the show. They have not been on this earth in a time that Keenan was not a cast member of Saturday Night Live. That blows my mind that that's a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
and
I mean, come on, he walks on and he's in the Ghost whatever sketch as the new dad, gets a laugh with one line, just great, with a look, just nothing better.
Yeah, and he'll probably before his time's up on SNL, he will break all the records, and we'll be there to cover them as it goes. But Bill, let me bring you here. Talk a little bit about first time host coming in over the next few weeks. Your thoughts?
I'm always a little bit torn about this because you just don't know what you're going to get. But I think there's the excitement of not knowing if you're going to get someone like an Adam Driver or Justin Timberlake who comes in and kills it when you think, no, there's no way. So I think both of them have that potential. Issa Rae, I'm not as familiar with. I mean, I know her, what she's on, but I think Bill Burr, he's got such a track record with comedy and drama and even animation. I mean, he's been in so many things. So I think he could come on. And my biggest fear would be that we would go too cameo heavy just to cover the fact that there's two first timers coming on. So hopefully we don't end up with 25 cameos like we have in the past, but
fair point.
Yeah, very fair. And during election season, you could definitely count on some cameos. So
sure.
We'll see what's going to happen. Okay, well, that covers the first episode of season 46 of SNL. Before I close up, I'm going to invite Liz, if you have anything you want to plug, anything that is going on at Collider, by all means, plug it to the viewers.
Well, go to collider.com for all your entertainment news. Don't go to any other website. Other websites suck. Only Collider is good. And you can find me on Twitter at Lizlet. That's Lizlet. And also, I was joking. Other websites are good, but Collider is better.
Of course. We love Collider here at SNL Stats. So, Rich, I know you said you're not so active on Twitter, but is there anywhere else people can follow kind of your thoughts on the show? We'll definitely have you back over the next few months as we cover it.
Yeah, no, I'm just the old man just complaining to anyone who will listen about Saturday Night Live. Not on Twitter as much. I do a lot of live storytelling now on Zoom, but nothing specifically now around here. But would love to hear from people and keep the discussion going throughout the season for sure.
Yeah, and superfan Bill, your first time saying your thoughts to the public about SNL, and you did great. You know so much about the show. Anywhere where people can reach out to you.
I'm on Twitter at BKLove73.
Okay. And we'll definitely have you back. You clearly know your stuff, so it's great to have you. And I just really want to thank the whole panel for coming on. This is only our second time we're doing a roundtable, but it seems to be going well, and I've got some great feedback from last week's show. Like I said, we're still working through the process of how we're doing the shows and things people like, things people don't like. So bear with us, but I encourage listener feedback. I want this to be a show for the community and for the other podcasts, for people who listen to them. Come on over, come tell us what you like and what you don't like, and we want to work with you. And we're going to have other podcasters, other journalists, other superfans join us from week to week. And also something really exciting I'm working towards. I'm not sure if it's going to be next week, maybe the week after, but I would like to do the show live at some point. I'm not doing it yet because, it is the first few shows, and just in case, I want to make sure that I have everything down properly for you guys, trying to treat this as professional as possible. But once we do go live, we're going to be able to take some questions live from people who are interested and want to talk to our panel. So I'll let you know who the panelists are, and you can prepare some questions and send them into the show. You can reach me at SNL Stats. I'm there on Twitter. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast feed to get this in audio form. Or if you want to watch us on video, see all of our beautiful faces, go to YouTube, search SNL Stats, and you will find last week's panel and this week's panel and all the panels moving forward. So thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you next week. Good night and have a pleasant week. We'll see you soon.